Hello, everyone. Not mystery.
I'm Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man. It happened again, folks. As if,
Yep.
as if I'm sure everyone isn't aware at this point, but it happened a second time.
I mean, after the first time, you think that Secret Service would have gotten their shit together and actually managed to secure the former and hopefully future president, but it seems like they're still out to lunch. I
Well,
mean,
I mean,
thankfully,
they
this
they
guy didn't get
did,
close enough to actually shoot him, but
yeah, they did catch the guy this time, and he's not dead, so we can actually gather what what his motivations were and are. So it's improving. It shouldn't need to improve because this is a big freaking deal. And this is exactly why we have a Secret Service, allegedly. But que sera, sera, I suppose.
yeah, but it appears that this guy had been lying in wait. So I feel like if they had had an actual Secret Service team, they probably would have found this guy a lot sooner.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it wasn't even them who caught the guy. Somebody was passing through the golf course and noticed a rifle or a AR freaking uh, peeking out from a bush and then went and mentioned it to the Secret Service. Which raises the question: if random passersby are more competent at doing your job than you are, maybe you should just not have that job anymore. When you're in something as high profile and necessary as protecting people from getting assassinated, the failure rate on that of necessity needs to be much lower than any other job.
And of course, as you can imagine, after this was announced, Democrats and a lot of people on the left wing were doing pretty much everything they can to try and push blame away from themselves for this second assassination tape on their political rival, the one that they've been demonizing for years. And in fact, I think I heard one news outlet that says Trump's um, extreme rhetoric was to blame for these assassination attempts, which was just the wildest thing I had ever read.
he's he's not the person calling everyone who disagrees with him a fascist and a white supremacist and a Nazi and a this, that, and the other every 5 fucking minutes for the last 8 years and change. Like,
So I have this video here from Tim Pool. We're gonna go over the
mhm.
what happened, and I don't know if it's covered in the video because the video is from last week, but recently the shooter, his son, I believe, was arrested for explicit material of children.
Physiognomy check impossible, I'm guessing.
It was 50-50, but I probably would have leaned towards yes.
Like, I keep remembering that one line from Roald Dahl, though. When you're ugly on the inside, no matter how beautiful you are on the outside, eventually it will show. Whereas if you're ugly but well intentioned, eventually that goodness will also show. Like, if physiognomy is wrong, why in the fuck are there so many correlates? Is the question. We could literally play a game of bingo just based on physiognomy at this point. Caught
Yep.
with caught with kitty fiddling material is probably the free space at this
I'm pretty sure you
point.
could also do that for female teachers who are likely to sleep with their students because they always tend to have the same look.
Yeah, that's not a disturbing series of rationales or anything. Oy vey.
All right, I'm gonna hit the play on the video.
Yep.
Blame for second assassination attempt. He believed the rhetoric of Biden Harris and he acted on it. Speaking with Fox News following the second suspected assassination attempt on Trump, candidate Donald Trump said that Joe Biden Harris's rhetoric led to the attempt. He believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris and he acted on it. Their rhetoric is causing me to be shot at when I am the one who is going to save the country, and they are the ones that are destroying the country both from the inside and out. Trump noted comments from Biden and Harris, the latter of which is now running against Trump, painting Trump as a threat to democracy, while in turn saying they are unity leaders. They are the opposite. These are people that want to destroy our country, adding that it's called the enemy from within. They are the real threat. They do it with a combination of rhetoric and lawsuits that wrap me up. They wrap me up in. These are the things that dangerous fools like the shooter listen to. This is the rhetoric they listen to. And the same with the first one. Now,
I mean, he's not wrong at all.
Yeah,
because
there is
they've
no lie
literally
to be
been on-
detected here, I'm afraid.
I mean, the language that they've used against Trump hasn't just been derogatory; it's been outright violent, and this was basically bound to happen at some point.
I'm honestly surprised and like optimistic about the nature of the human condition that it took this long, because they've been beating the "he's retarded orange Hitler" drum since like 2015, before he was even president. And Trump Russia possible collusion, Trump Russia, everyone's seen the supercut of all of the like mainstream journalists doing that thing. And
Speaking of,
let's not even get into the actual culture war aspect, where now every villain is Trumpian. Hydra Cap, Red Skull suddenly is Jordan Peterson, etc., ad nauseum. And it took this long for someone to finally, after being soaked in the morass of all of that shit, finally just be like, well, if he's that much of a threat to democracy, if he's the next Mussolini or the next Hitler, then I'm going to be the hero that should have stopped Hitler, essentially.
Yeah, but you mentioned the Trump Russia narrative, and I think that's particularly important in this case because this guy was basically a crazy Ukraine obsessive leftist, where he actually went and fought in Ukraine.
I mean, kudos to him for actually getting off his ass and putting his principles where his mouth is. Because Lord knows the Voshes and Hassans of the world aren't going to do that.
I think it's crazy to fight in a war for another country that you probably didn't even know about until the war broke out.
Yeah, and the fact that the war in Ukraine has been a nothing burger all along is a whole nother wrinkle to this particular tapestry.
I mean, just the fervor with which people threw their support behind Ukraine after the war broke out is just honestly mind-baffling. I'm not saying that I support Russia, because obviously I don't, and war is terrible, but like just the fervor of it.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the Israel-Palestine thing, where I'm like, I don't really like either of these people, so they can both go fuck themselves at this point. Like,
yeah, and it's like we are like basically burning through our nation's money giving support to these people, and like, it seems that these people are willing to burn down their own futures so long as Ukraine gets support, which is
and let's not forget that in a world where people are having to use their credit cards to buy groceries every week, we are sending millions upon millions of dollars, not to the homeless, the destitute, the downtrodden in our own country, heaven for fucking fend, that's nationalist and that's evil, but to Eastern Europe, where it's basically doing no good anyway because they're both so fucked in the head that it's never going to amount to anything. And all the while, the inflation at home goes up and up and up and up and up, and you're a evil fascist nationalist if you think we should prioritize our own country over people half a world away.
Yeah. Slight tangent about the homeless. Did you see the report about California's efforts to curb homelessness in its state?
I did not. What happened?
They spent, I think, like $22 billion and didn't help a single person.
Could we just like set some nukes along the San Andreas Fault and like sink California into the ocean like Atlantis or fucking Numenor, please? The world would be a better place if we did so. Like, give everyone who wants to leave California like a month or two to get out of California, and then just Numenor it.
I mean, true, but also you also have to wonder where did all that billions of dollars go?
I'm gonna take a guess and say embezzlement and nepotism and corruption and basically a bunch of HR hags getting high off the hog.
Almost certainly, but we could definitely do an episode around government spending to look in how all this money is being wasted. But let's get back to the video of the Trump assassination.
Next,
Donald Trump has published a list that he shows of all of these statements, and we'll go through them. The first thing I want to say is 1 hour after reporting dropped that there was a shooting at the golf course where Trump was, and within this time frame, we're learning that this may have been an assassination attempt. Hakeem Jeffries says Trump's 2025 plan, it's going to ban abortion. We must stop them. And what I've said is, a lot of people have said, oh, you can't do, oh man, what's wrong with you? He's allowed to say that tweet. I just feel like it's bad to say that tweet right after, within an hour of someone trying to shoot at the former president. They, whether it was scheduled or not, you take a look at all of the videos that are coming out now, and even after this, I think it was NBC News that changed the subject and said Trump and Vance are pushing conspiracy theories against immigrants. But they say like, well, just moments after the assassination attempt, Trump's rhetoric and blah, 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 as if to imply or to segue, yeah, Trump is bad, but what about, or the assassination attempt is bad, but what about this? Let's pull up the...
Every time Trump has ever been asked about the abortion issue, since like the 80s, he has said he believes in exceptions for endangering the life of the mother, for rape, and for incest. I don't know where people are getting this idea that he's going to suddenly sign a national abortion ban, because he's been consistent since like the early 80s that he doesn't want to do that and that he thinks it should be a case-by-case, state-by-state issue, which, by the way, is correct and based, but that's neither here nor there. Moreover, this reminds me of what happened with Destiny the first time this happened. Now, Destiny usually at least feigns some level of reasonability, but when the Trump assassination attempt happened the first time, he basically was going, I wish the shooter hadn't missed, and so on and so forth. And yet, we are not allowed to call them hysterical or radicalized, even though they throw around words like white supremacy and fascism like it is Germany in the 1930s, when it very clearly is not. It's America in the 2020s. The average white supremacist has not really been a substantive political entity for 50, 60 years now, thereabouts. But they need him to be the Nazi, so regardless of truth or relevance, or whether this is in any way warranted, they're going to use the word Nazi on him regardless, which honestly I'm just flabbergasted, because I grew up under the George Bush administration, and George Bush was a complete and utter fuck up and lied us into every conceivable war imaginable. And he didn't get half the shit that Trump gets just by saying that the people of the country should be listened to in a system that is at least partially democratic. No?
Yeah, and you've also mentioned Project 2025. Trump has disavowed that like 20 times. Like, there is literally nothing Trump could say that could get them to stop this insane and dangerous rhetoric, to stop spreading lies.
Because they don't actually listen to him. They want him to be the villain, and so regardless of what's actually there or not, he's going to be painted as the villain. This is why I say he should just freaking embrace his Trumpishness and tell the establishment to go fuck itself, because every time he does that, his poll numbers go up. Screw playing their
You know-
decorum game. The decorum game accomplishes nothing and pisses everyone off.
If he wins, hopefully, maybe he should do Project 2025 just to piss them off.
I don't know about that. I think he should probably I think he should just stand by his guns and continue to do the thing he's been wanting to do since the 80s and just be like, no, there are exceptions for rape, life of the mother, and incest. End of discussion. And yes, that will tick off some of the, radical fundamentalists out there. But frankly, if you get pretty much everything else you could ever conceivably want from the dude, you can bite the bullet a little bit on this issue.
Yeah. But let's get back to the video because some of these comments are really out of pocket.
Donald Trump website. They say Democrats used increasingly incendiary rhetoric against President Trump in the days, weeks, and months leading up to the 2 assassination attempts. Kamala Harris repeatedly quote Trump as a threat to our democracy and fundamental freedoms. She says, it's on us to recognize the threat Trump poses. Does one of us have to come out alive? Ha ha ha. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye. That's Joe Biden. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Trump is a threat to this nation. Biden says there is one existential threat. It's Donald Trump. And it goes on. Tim Waltz, are Republicans a threat to democracy? Yes. Are they going to put people's lives in danger? Yes. Gwen Waltz, bye-bye, Donald Trump. That one I don't think is all that big a deal, though. Come on.
Steve Cohen, Trump is an enemy of the United States.
That is a bold, bold statement. Maxine Waters, are Trump supporters preparing for a civil war against us? That one's not the same as saying Trump is an existential threat like we have from Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Mm-hmm. But look at all of this. The threat is not over. Trump is an existential threat. You can't have all of these politicians and personalities coming out on TV and screaming like Rachel Maddow is really nuts.
She's nuts.
Stacey Plassick, Trump
Crazy
needs to be
lady.
shot.
Oh, she's
Wait,
the worst.
what?
Do you see that one?
Holy crap.
That's
What?
crazy.
In-
That should be at the top.
Yeah,
in
seriously.
theory,
this is
if it were just
2023.
one person or one network saying this, I would be a little bit more lenient. But the issue is, it is freaking everyone. Even some of the people on Fox News are so anti-Trump that they would rather hoist themselves by their own petard than just admit that the guy is a decent politician. So it's not just that these sentiments are out there, it's that they are all pervasive and they are coming from every side of every issue.
Yes, and you also have to consider about who they're speaking to, because the modern Democrat Party basically attracts the mentally deranged. And I'm not even kidding, because there was a report done that showed that people who are left wing tend to have a greater tendency to be diagnosed with some form of mental illness than people who are centrist or right wing. I'm not saying that for people who are like liberals, but I'm talking about people who are like leftists.
Yeah, the ideologically captured, ideologically possessed folks, of which there are a fuck ton. So much so that I get tack-feared from the left every 5 fucking minutes, even though I supported Bernie Sanders both times, and my second and third choices in 2020 were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. But apparently I'm not lefty enough because I despise social justice every bit as much as I despise evangelical family values nonsense. I am a strict anti-moralism person, and apparently you can't be a strictly anti-moralism person on the actual left anymore, because social justice is sacrosanct, or intersectionality is sacrosanct, or neo-Hegelianism is sacrosanct, and it is unthinkable to ever question it, apparently.
You're roboting a bit, and it's probably because I'm getting low signal. Try saying something now.
Okay, testing, 1, 2, testing.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
So, yeah, these people, one, are more likely to be mentally ill, and two, are being inundated with this dangerous rhetoric that their political opposition is an existential threat to democracy, and people will die unless he's somehow stopped, and
they're
he
getting
got
it from
into
every
fun
angle,
fights.
which makes it seem more real to them, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you were roboting a bit again. I'm going to
Oh,
move into the living room. Hopefully, for a second.
alrighty.
All right, you were saying?
I was saying, and they're getting it from every side or every angle, which makes it seem more real to them. That's the thing. Some of this isn't or wouldn't be as dangerous as it is if it weren't coming from every angle, or as good as every angle, every mainstream angle. Because if it were just NBC behaving like this, or just CNN behaving like this, that would be one thing. But almost everyone that's a member of the establishment, even the right-wing establishment, quote-unquote, still view Trump this way, as if he's the second coming of Mussolini or Hitler. And one, it just isn't so. Two, you are utterly diluting any usefulness those terms actually have by crying wolf about it so many times. And three, if you beat this war drum for 8 or 9 years from every conceivable angle and from every medium that you possibly can, this was inevitable. And again, it's a testament to the actual good intentions of humanity in general that it did take this long. Because I'm frankly surprised.
Yeah. And again, this is the group of people who believe that that violence is an appropriate response when people, have an opinion that they don't like.
Yeah, liberals get the bullet too, anyone?
So,
Oh my gosh.
Democrat Stacey Plaskett says Trump needs to be shot in TV stumble over alleged mishandling of classified documents.
Yeah, I've seen this clip actually. She corrects herself by going, stopped. But it's not great. It's not great. It's the first word that came to mind is
Wow,
shot.
I don't even want to play it on
No,
YouTube.
I wouldn't.
I don't even know if we should play it. So,
what do they expect?
Wow.
Like they're people, they're like the cult delusional mass formation psychosis side, and they say all these terrible things against one man for the last 8 years, 12 years. And what do they expect? Peace, calm from their crazy followers?
and
That is a great point. They have this thing they call stochastic terrorism, which is basically just guilt by association as a doctrine. And despite the fact that they're the side that believes that you can accidentally cause extremism without even mentioning extremism, because guilt by association, derp, despite the fact that they're the ones who scream and rant and rave about stochastic terrorism, apparently none of their overt saying the quiet part out loud and being as direct as they possibly can about it will ever count as stochastic terrorism. I don't even believe that stochastic terrorism is a thing because, like I say, I think it's a pseudo-intellectual way to poison the well by guilt by association. But in so far as it is a thing, surely the more direct you are about that rhetoric, the more stochastic your terrorism therefore would be. And they've been way more direct.
The thing is that the followers absolutely believe that stochastic terrorism is a thing. The leaders don't, which is why they just want to use it as a weapon against the political opposition, which is why it only ever goes one way.
I think it's just the classic, when my enemy does something, then it's stochastic terrorism. When I do it, I'm being a righteous crusader. Your backwards tribal demon, my great deity, blah. Fucking special pleading as ever.
Yeah, and the fact that's been going on for so long is the issue, and it's discussing that even after the first one, where he nearly almost died and somebody in the crowd did die, but they still haven't fucking stopped with the rhetoric. Like, these people are mad. They're absolutely insane.
And not in the fun or interesting or creative way. If you're going to go completely fucking insane, could you at least go completely fucking insane in a way that would add something to the human condition? Like, if we must have madmen, maybe they should be mad geniuses, which is why I support people like Elon. He may be a little bit fucked in the head, but his nature of being fucked in the head is actually contributing to the betterment of the world. This kind of being fucked in the head only results in lynch mobs and witch burnings eventually.
They mock it. Vindman's wife.
Yeah.
What did you say? Something like all ears are safe, carry on, or whatever?
Yeah.
They lose their minds over Laura Loomer posting what I would just call crude jokes or spicy tweets, depending on who you are. But I just look at those and I'm like, yeah, that's Laura. You know, it's like, whatever. What are you going to do? So there's a lot of conservatives that are mad. They're saying it's too much. It's bad. The left is saying it's racist. There are people on the right saying this is racist. We don't need it. I just go, look, man, people can tweet and they can say what they want to say. The only people making that news are people who have nothing else to talk about. But I can't say this. Democrats and the media lost their mind over it. I'm sitting here thinking, I don't want to talk about this. But they mock Donald Trump facing assassination attempts. Mm-hmm. They make jokes about it, but then claim that Laura Loomer is stepping over the line. I'm sorry, man. I think it's fair to say that, you know, we have another story for you. Trump says he hates Taylor Swift. It's like, eye roll. You know what I mean? Like, we get it. We get it. It's one thing to be critical of someone having tweets you think are crude or whatever. You're not, whatever. It's another thing. And if the Democrats came out and they said, we don't like these tweets, I say, yeah, well, I'm not a big fan either. Then they mock Trump over these assassination attempts. And I'm like, you have no moral high ground. Like, I don't care about mean tweets at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they go absolutely insane over Trump, tweeting out, comments, jokes, mean things. But they will joke about the most barbaric acts. A man died. Trump almost died. These people will still go on with the same insane rhetoric. These people.
I mean,
have
does
no
anybody
moral
remember
principles.
the Kathy Griffin thing where she got like mannequin's head and made it look like Trump and reference in like ISIS decapitation video? We're not
Yeah.
allowed to take issue with something like that, but they're allowed to unironically believe that he is a fascist, a Nazi, and every evil thing that modern humanism can maintain that isn't literal demons.
Like, I find it, like, they say that don't attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity, but I'm struggling to find any other descriptor for this than malice.
It's both. They are both incompetent and stupid. Because if they were malicious and competent, any of their ideas would actually work, instead of backfiring and Streisand affecting everything they don't like over and over and over a fucking again. So the good news is that partially due to being out of touch and partially due to them just being all a bunch of geriatrics at this point, they are both malicious and incompetent, which means they will eventually destroy themselves. The bad news is that does mean that we have basically the worst possible patients leading the asylum, so to speak. They're old, they're out of touch, they're toffish, and they have fucked up ideological preconceptions.
Yeah. Look, at this point, I don't even know the kind of people who continue to support these folks. Like, I can only assume that after this, like, everyone who has not been ideologically captured, anybody who believes themselves to be reasonable, has to have woken up at this point.
I would hope so, but then again, every like mainstream establishment news source and or entertainment source decides we're going to make every villain possible Trump, so derp reasons. And that probably has something to do with it too, because it's not just everywhere in the news media and the political sphere and this, that, and the other. It's also in every mainstream like pop culture art thing out there. It's finally starting to shift maybe back towards the other way, but it took 10 years for us to even get this far with regards to the culture war. And for those 10 years, 8 of which, they were demonizing Trump for, Jordan Peterson is Red Skull, a Hydra version of Captain America is Trump, Homelander is Trump, blah, 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 like every fucking time. Meanwhile, whenever their side is depicted as someone villainous, like the Flag Smashers from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're actually poor, misunderstood villains, and we should side with them because Antifa is good, don't you know? Derp.
Yeah.
Someone was stalking Donald Trump, intent on taking his life. If this happens, this country falls into bedlam. And I don't know, World War III follows, destabilization of the United States, what remains of the petrodollar, foreign military bases fall into chaos, China makes its moves, and then everything just starts falling apart. We don't want that.
I'm glad you brought up Rachel Vindman. Chris Carr.
So if they try again and God forbid that someone actually succeeds in taking out Donald Trump, what do you think the fallout would be?
Honestly, I don't. I can't even wrap my head around what will likely happen at that point, because assuming that the third time is the charm, I hope it really fucking isn't. I hope I saw someone, I think it was the Lotus Eater, suggest there might be as many as 5 potential assassinations, 2 of which have already happened, waiting in the wings. I hope that he somehow manages to come through all 5 of them and not be scathed. But assuming that one of them does, I don't even want to believe what's going to happen, because here's the really sick and fucked up part. Even the left doesn't like Kamala. They would have rather somebody like Tina Turner or somebody like Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang or Cornel West or somebody like that. Not Bernie anymore, because Bernie has fucked up and shown himself to be completely useless twice. But the actual left wants somebody like that. So they're not happy with Kamala deep down. Obviously, the center and the right are not happy with Kamala deep down. And Trump is probably going to win just on the basis of being the only likable or lively candidate. So if that choice gets yeeted from us, assuming that they let JD Vance take over, that could potentially be okay. But if for some reason there's discord among the ranks and they don't do with JD Vance what they did with Kamala when Biden finally showed his full hand, then this is going to be a fucking nightmare, because the establishment Republicans might try to replace Trump's appointed successor with an establishment Republican, and at that point there will be cities on fire. I'm sorry, there's just no other option at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if Donald Trump does get taken out by an assassin, people already believe that there's no justice in this country. They already don't have any faith in the system. Their last, hope of, maybe seeing change that they might want
is populism,
the election,
and they hate it.
Yeah. So if Trump, something happens to him, there will be no faith left in the American system anymore. And then, you said, shit's going to get set on fire. And here's the thing: Antifa will make it worse, because this would be the opportunity that they've been waiting for.
Yeah, because as I said, secret, deep down in their hearts, they don't like the establishment of their party any more than we like the establishment of the Republicans, or because really, both establishment parties hate their base with a fiery passion. I don't know why or how that works, but they both hate their base with a fiery passion. So if Trump does go off and all they're left with is Kamala, and they don't for some reason let J.D. Vance take over, at that point it literally is going to be like the French Revolution, because there literally is no mechanism to fix this democratically at that point. If everyone who tries to be a decent politician gets got by the establishment, then honestly our only recourse is let's get out the guillotines and go full reign of terror. And when both parties have a large percentage of their base that feels so sadistically unrepresented, that is basically the inevitability. It's going to be like Weimar Germany, where on one side it's Antifa, and on the other side it's the now radicalized populists going, well, fuck this. I'm not playing by the post-war consensus game anymore. And by the way, the post-war consensus needs to go sooner rather than later anyway, because it's not a coincidence that everyone in power is a mid-octogenarian to a nonagenarian at this point. Sooner or later, there's going to have to be a shakeup in the international political status quo, because everyone in power is people who either put the post-war consensus in place or the direct descendants of those who did. And that's not healthy when your entire political class is 20 years or 30 years above the retirement age, for God's fucking sake.
Yeah, and we've seen what these people think about things like populism. When we saw the video of Nancy Pelosi at Oxford, and how she believes that people are basically fools that need their superiors to lead them, because God forbid they get what they want, the whole system would be on fire. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
The whole system appears to be absolute crap. It isn't benefiting anybody but you. So maybe the shit does need to go.
Yeah. It's well and truly past its expiration date, as are most of the people still clinging to power. And it flabbergasts me that only 4% of all politicians in America are under the age of 40 or 40 or below. That's utterly insane. And like 70% of all the politicians are above the legal retirement age. Does that sound tenable to anyone? Because it sure as fuck doesn't sound tenable to me. Because even if we somehow manage to pull through and Trump does get in and everything's relatively hunky-dory for a while, sooner or later the Reaper is going to call his number in. And like politicians are going to start falling like dominoes. And it's not just in America either. Putin, I think, is in like his 70s, I think. And I don't know about President Xi or Kim Jong-un, but pretty much everyone, every
I think Kim Jong-un
institution is a house of cards at this point, waiting for time to run out.
I'm pretty sure Kim Jong-un is relatively young compared to the rest of them. But yeah, like it's time for these people to go, because not just them, but also the order that they try so desperately to maintain is also breaking down. Like, there is no shining outer casing that makes everything look like it knows what it's doing. No, we have seen the internal workings of the machine, and it's busted down, dusty, rusty gears, like cracked. It's like it's an entire mess.
Does it make sense to anyone that you can't get a house if you're below the age of about 30? You can't buy groceries if you're at about that age. Meanwhile, the boomers own something like 60 to 63% of all the property, and the silent generation owns another 12%, leaving the rest of us, Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, to fight over a third of all the remaining property, or all the remaining capital.
That's not counting the property that's owned by large corporations.
That's true too. And you wonder why people are dissatisfied with this, and why they think that, in a allegedly partially democratic system, that populism makes the most sense, because those two concepts are interchangeable. Well, go ahead and try to thwart the popular will again, and then I'll remind you what happens to aristocrats in a reign of terror-like situation. Because, it ain't pretty. It ain't pretty for anybody.
If Trump loses, that would suck. But obviously, he wouldn't the entire thing wouldn't be destroyed. But if Trump dies, there will be no peace.
That's basically the establishment saying to us, your will is completely immaterial, so take the crumbs that we give you and shut the fuck up. That's essentially what that would be.
Editor has a story on this case in particular on scanner scnr.com because she deleted her ear tweet and then said she deleted it, and then she was like, it was flippant. Political violence is a serious issue, whether it's aimed at a former president, the media, immigrants, or political enemies. Every incident should be addressed appropriately. And so there's this level of oh, I am contrite, but also they say bad things too. And someone responded by pointing out that she had initially doubled down, saying, I'm not sorry if you're triggered. Which one is it? Are you standing by what you said, which, free speech, you're allowed to make say really horrible things. On the other hand, are you realizing that actually Americans are united in the sense that a threat to a president like an assassination attempt is horrifying and unifying in the sense that we are all against it? Trying to make a joke out of it actually makes you sort of the strange weirdo in this sense. Not to co-opt the word weird again.
I agree. And I think in moments like this, the radical left is really showing their true colors, right? Mm-hmm. They would rather have President Trump be assassinated than he be president of this country again. And I think if you're a patriotic American, that's just despicable. We can't have a political discourse if that is the reality. And for me as a conservative, that makes me want President Trump back in the White House that much more, right? If they're so fearful of him that they would be willing to have someone kill him and encourage that and support that, then clearly he is a threat to the deep state and everything they stand for. And that
I'm not even conservative, and I agree with that. Seriously. And in all honesty, seriously, how the fuck do you think you look when this is the irony about them always using unity rhetoric, because they'll use this unity rhetoric, and then when the unity in question comes about as a unifying banner against the establishment, then they basically go, no, not like that. And I'm sorry, but you either need to become a better infrastructure so that people would actually support you, or you need to come to terms with the fact that if there is to be any unity, that unity is going to take the form of unifying against you rather than for you. Which leads to them decrying populism as if it's a four-letter word in a allegedly democratic republic. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, so I can understand people in the system being afraid because, after what happened, with his first term, where they basically, tried to obstruct his policies, lied to him, basically did everything they could to, fuck with his administration. Donald Trump's going to go in there and basically smash up all their shit. But, the average person, I really got to think, this country is markedly worse since Trump left office. By every metric that I can conceive that actually matters.
Yeah. Again, people have to take out loans to afford groceries now.
Yeah, and the fact that people are still willing to endure 4 more years of this rather than just eat their vegetables and vote for the orange man.
Yeah, it's the stereotypical Jordan Peterson line of "Can you possibly ever clean your room?" comes to mind here. It honestly is a combination of abstract moralism and ego. They would rather see the entire world burn to a crisp than ever conceive of the fact they might be wrong about anything, especially if that means giving their enemies credit for anything. And ironically, this is exactly the same thing that happened the last couple of times that a president got assassinated, be it JFK or Ronald Reagan. Because in both of those cases, they started to have rhetoric that involved telling the people about the man behind the curtain, about the military-industrial complex and stuff. The difference, of course, being back when Reagan or JFK was involved, these people were young enough and with it enough, i.e., in touch with the world enough, they could actually meaningfully pull off an assassination. Whereas now, they're all geriatrics who are in various stages of cognitive decline. So not only are they out of touch pseudo-aristocrats, they're so ancient that they literally cannot get in touch with what people actually want anymore. And that's why their attempts to do what they did to Reagan and JFK aren't working. It's not because they're not doing the same maneuver that they used to. It's because they have changed in the 30 or 40 years interim, and they're no longer as good at the political maneuvering and being in touch with people or their sentiments anymore. They can't pull the wool out over your eyes if they literally can't, pull the sheet over them, basically, is what I'm saying.
That is someone that I want to see picking it apart.
Yeah, we have the tweets in question. Rachel Vindman, and this is the wife of one of the Vindman brothers. I'm not sure which one. She originally posted on X, "No ears were harmed. Carry on with your Sunday afternoon." I mean, that's I just inappropriate. We'll put it that way. "Sorry you're triggered. I mean, no, I'm not. I don't care a little bit." Wow. And then said, "I have deleted my tweet. It was flippant and political violence is a serious issue. Whether it's aimed at a former president, the media, immigrants, or political enemies, and every incident should be addressed appropriately if we want to change the tenor of our political discourse." Well, it is you and these ridiculous posts you make, and the Democrats screaming at the top of their lungs that Trump is Hitler, is a fascist, will take your freedoms over and over and over again, that is driving this stuff. And you know what's funny? Because I can sit here on the show every night and say, I pray for Joe Biden's safety. I want the man to be happy with his sitting on a rocking chair on his front porch. His grandkids are, having, it's funny because I would say his grandkids are playing with the dog or whatever, but his grandkids are like 30 or 40 years old. So his grandkids.
Not one that he acknowledges that's
Great
pretty young, but
grandkid.
And the dog bites.
Yeah, and there's also the matter of the grandkids that he refuses to acknowledge.
Well, there's that too. But dear establishment hacks, you can't say the quiet part out loud and then unsay it when people rightly get pissed off with you. This is once again another case of a combination of we are the moral superiors and we are the egotistical aristocrats, because they think they actually should be allowed to unironically say the quiet part out loud and then unsay it. And people would just go, "Yep, seems legit." That's what they think should happen. They should be allowed to be as incendiary as they want, and then basically rewind time to before they said it, as and when they get a negative backlash, because they don't even think the negative backlash is warranted. This is how out of touch these people are, and how much up their own abstract asses that they are.
Yeah, but it's not going to work, especially in the age of the internet where people screenshot everything. Like, she thinks she can just, backtrack this. Like, no, someone screen grabbed that shit, so you're going to have to fucking own it.
Which is why I am still a proud member of the nation of Kekistan, because the internet is perennially based. All hail the 4chan autists. You will be the saviors of the future. You'll get statues for this one day. There will be a statue of Pepe in fucking Times Square if we have anything to say about it.
Everyone, yeah. So.
Okay, well, not that dog and the younger
That too,
grandkids.
I
They're
think.
eating the dogs.
They're eating the dogs. I want them to safely retire with smiles on their faces. And where warranted, I don't really care for the documents case against Joe Biden nor Donald Trump. But the fact they're going after against Donald Trump, then they should go after Joe Biden. But if they dropped both, I'd say, I don't care. Can we move on? Can Trump come in? And then the people who are in government who have committed crimes will be investigated. That's all true. But I don't want to see any political violence. Not for any of these people. I can tell you that.
I also read a report that said that a number of government officials are preparing to flee the country if Trump gets in, fearing reprisal. So my only thought when I heard that was, what the hell did you do?
Yeah, you poked the bear for 8 years, and now you're surprised the bear is potentially going to be shitty with you. Like, you used every quiver in your, or every arrow in your quiver to try to skewer this guy, and several that you developed just for him, and you're surprised that he wants to get a pound of flesh back out of it? Yeah, I don't think so. You can't call someone the second coming of fascism and Nazism and white supremacy and everything the fuck else, and make him legal enemy number one for doing exactly the same shit that every other politician does, and not have him get at all annoyed with you for doing that.
My thought was that, even not necessarily what some of the people may have done to fuck with Trump, but I think a lot of people are just out and out corrupt. And so they know that when Trump gets in, he's going to investigate a lot of these things, and the crimes are going to be brought to light, and they could go to federal prison. So they're preparing to run away while they still can.
I mean, as long as they're not, fucking up our neck of the woods, I'm half tempted to just let them leave. Just leave and don't come back. We're good. We won't miss you. We don't need you. You've always been dead weight and counterproductive. So goodbye. Tell Justin Trudeau I said hello, and also told him he's a fucking idiot.
I mean, Trudeau is most likely finished whenever Canada holds its next election. So hopefully, the South Castro will get the boot too.
Yeah, and the reform thing over in the UK is probably also going to have a massive landslide after 3 more years of Labour, which is based.
Yeah.
So this is gonna finally maybe be the last 10 years worth of political activism and culture war finally coming to fruition at last, because apparently they actually did have 10 years worth of stockpiled resources that they could play with.
Yeah. I mean, the Labour Party in the UK is particularly disgusting. It's like they're outright just saying that, yes, we are going to put the boot on your neck, and there's literally nothing you can do to stop us.
Yeah, two-tier Kier is definitely a thing. And the only good side of Labour being such shitbags at this point is that the more egregious they go, and the quicker they go egregiously, the more likely it is that both the Conservatives and Labour are going to get shit canned, and Reform is going to get in there, and Farage will be Prime Minister, which is basically the good ending for the UK at this point.
I mean, I hope so, but I feel like if that's going to happen, Farage needs to be more proactive.
Yeah, but I mean, Reform hasn't even been in there 6 months, and already they are one of the most unpopular formulations of a political party over there. Granted, most of my knowledge, comes from the Lotus Eaters, so obviously I'm getting it from them. But Labour has overextended their bounds already, and they've barely been in 6 months, so it's going to get really funny, especially if they give the younger generation the right to vote like they're planning to, because they think that that young people vote left wing just by default, and that's not the case. The reason why in the 80s and 90s the young people voted left is because the overbearing authority in the establishment was a right-wing authority. But now that social justice, intersectionality, and neo-Hegelianism is the dominant paradigm, the freedom-loving, freedom of expression craving youths are probably going to side more with Farage than with the left. And I can't wait for them to give 16-year-olds the right to vote, only to have it backfire on them horribly and have Reform get an even bigger landslide.
Didn't the same thing kind of happen in Germany? I believe. I believe they tried to lower the age for voting in Germany, and they just had a massive
And AFD.
swell of populism.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, I think what's happening there is they remember in the 90s and 80s and early 2000s that the youth voted left, but they don't understand how the way that the left and right operate has shifted. Back in the day, it was the Red Scare, the Satanic Panic, and won't somebody please think of the children that stymied freedom of expression. Now, it's the HR Karen screaming, won't somebody please think of the intersectional neo-Hegelian bullshit that's being the overbearing moralistic force. And my theory, essentially, is that the youths don't crave either wing of any party. They crave whoever is going to allow them to break down normative barriers and express themselves freely, which at the moment is sure as fuck not the left.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is bad for this country, but how do we describe, how do I say we, how do have I described the context of the modern political conflict? The machine state, the uniparty wants to maintain the petrodollar, and Donald Trump wants to secure our borders and bring jobs that can boost the American economy. One is more focused on the U.S., one is more focused on, I don't know, hegemonic Western power or whatever. But nowhere am I saying that they must be stopped because they're evil fascist Hitler. Now, you know what they do? I made a post mocking the idea, saying that Harris was like Hitler times 200, intentionally mocking what they say about Donald Trump. They took it seriously.
Yeah.
Really?
Because abstract moralism and appeals to authority and or elitism are literally their guiding principle at this point. That's why so many of their arguments are tinged with like moral language, and that's also why they keep getting more and more confused when the groundswell of people, the actual people on the ground, dislike them. Again, it's just like I was saying with the sort of left-right switch thing just a second ago. They remember that in the 80s and 90s, the goth movement, the punk movement, the sort of British invasion counterculture was the method of freedom of expression. So they think that youth automatically vote left. But as I say, my standing theory, and I see no reason, I see nothing that could possibly refute it, is that the youth of any given period don't side with left or right. They side with whoever the fuck lets them get away with freedom of expression. And in the 80s and 90s, that definitely was the left and definitely wasn't the right. Because Satanic Panic, because Red Scare, etc., so on. But now, it's the HR Karens and the professors and the critical theorists and the neo-Hegelians that are the establishment order, who are stymieing people's freedom of expression, which is exactly why movements like Kekistan or movements like what's going on with Javier Milei in where the fuck is he president again? Forget. But point being,
president of Argentina.
Yeah. Point being, the reason why you're seeing the populist right become a thing when it wasn't before is because before it was the right wing being authoritarian and moralistic. Now it is very much the left who's being authoritarian and moralistic and finds the used ways of expressing themselves immoral and horrifying. And the youth, again, in my model of things, go with whoever lets them express things. Because the youth are the people who are going to break down the most barriers, because they're the ones who are trying to figure out how shit works at that point. And if the establishment they grow up in is a right-wing one, they will lean left. if the establishment they grow up in is a left-wing one, they will lean libertarian right. Because, frankly, the left-right distinction is utterly meaningless. The only distinction that really honestly matters is the libertarian authoritarian one, the vertical axis on the political compass.
Yeah, and these people, they seem to give all their care and compassion to the absolute worst people, the wrong side of things. Even though they claim to so much want to be on the right side of history, they always somehow manage to choose the wrong side. Like I believe it was Bukele, the president of El Salvador. A lot of He got criticized by a lot of people because of all the criminals that he threw in prison. And there was a great quote from him, but I believe it said when he was criticized, he said that they accused me of locking up thousands of people when in actuality I set millions of people free.
Yeah, because they were being jackbooted by a bunch of fucking cartels and gangs.
Yeah, these people were living in terror daily, and this guy cleaned them up and arrested the people who were doing the terrorizing, and now they want to label it as some sort of authoritarian monster. Like, no. Like, this guy is the hero of this story.
Yeah. He fucking got rid of the hordes of despicable criminals who were harassing his citizenry. And unsurprisingly, his citizenry therefore has a really good view of him. Yeah, and mind you, he's not doing this with literally every criminal. He's doing this with the kind of organized criminals who regularly murder, rape, and extort people. And the world is better off without those sorts of severe and inarguable crimes. Like money laundering, whatever, or like jaywalking, whatever. But when someone deliberately makes their life's goal to filch as many people as they can out of their happiness, safety, and sanity by murdering and raping and pillaging and doing whatever the fuck else, the world is definitely better off without those guys. Like, non-violent offenders is a whole nother thing, but the violent offenders who make careers out of their heinous shit definitely is something that we would be better off without. And the fact that that's even controversial to say is frankly kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, but these people are, as I've described before, like suicidally empathetic. These are the type of people where this happened years ago, but there was this, left-wing, activist woman who lived in Europe, I believe it was Germany, and she got sexually assaulted by a migrant, and she didn't want to tell the police who he was for fear that he would get deported. Like, this is these kinds of people.
That's, again, because they live in a world where abstractions matter more to them than material realities, or just realities in general. They would rather be a martyr in that situation than inflict more quote-unquote racism into the world, because they believe that intersectional standards are the only way someone can be moral, and therefore making more racism or sexism in the world is the worst possible thing you can do. Meanwhile, they will be as sexist as they like to men, especially white ones, especially anyone who disagrees with them.
Yeah, it's like they have this perfect image of whatever group they're trying to defend in their mind, and they project that image in their mind onto every single member of that group. And then whenever someone of that group fucks up, they go out of their way to protect them, because it's not them that they're necessarily protecting, it's the image of that group.
It's the academic conception of blackness, gayness, feminism, etc., and so on. And they actually get mad when the actual people on the ground in those groups disagree with them, because essentially they view the people in those demographics as completely incidental. What matters to them, in a kind of like almost Neoplatonic way, is the academic and political preconception of the ideas of blackness, gayness, femaleness, etc. And if you sin against those ideas as a member of those communities, that's just because you have the white straight male demon possessing you, essentially. That's what internalized self-hatred essentially amounts to, is a combination of we're accusing you of having Stockholm Syndrome against your own kind, and a combination of you're possessed by the demon that we're trying to exorcise from the whole world.
All right, we've been going for an hour. So wrap things up. Do you have any final words regarding the insanity behind the Trump assassination, the second Trump assassination? Because this is something that I forgot to mention during the course of this. Like over the last few days, it's come out this guy tried to put a was $150,000 bounty on Donald Trump.
Well, I'd
it's
like
hard.
to say I'd like to say hopefully this will be the last one, but frankly, that would surprise me if it were the last one. I hope I hope Donald Trump has been practicing his Neo powers from the Matrix. 'Cause you're gonna maybe need to start making a habit of dodging bullets, Mr. Trump. It's not right, it's not fair, but it is the world in which we live.
I highly doubt that even if somebody does succeed, God forbid, they'll be able to get that money because the guy's currently in federal custody. So good luck with that. And they are charging him with attempted assassination. So that's good. This guy will either probably spend the rest of his life in prison or hopefully the death penalty.
One way or the other. I'm glad this one survived, so we can actually figure out his motives. Because frankly, when the first one happened, the worst part of it, apart from obviously that it happened, was that we couldn't actually learn what this guy thought or how he thought. And those kind of things, those kind of details, are important in situations like this.
I think
because it tells you which way the wind is blowing.
The worst part of that was the blatant incompetence of the Secret Service.
Which, I mean, there again, you have to wonder how much of it was incompetence and how much of it was malice and how much of it was a combination of the two. Because I'm willing to bet that Biden and Harris get the biggest, burliest, scary dudes they can. And meanwhile, most of Trump's detail are apparently like the kind of HR hags that JD Vance drew attention to.
I mean, you saw the director of the Secret Service. It was that woman who was trying to push an initiative to have, I believe, 30% female agents at Secret Service. And like, this woman should have never even gotten in this position. And lo and behold, she was appointed by Biden.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are plenty of women who can kick ass and take names with the best of them. Like, there are the hypothetical Karen Murphys of the world out there. But if you start from the premise of intersectional social justice bullshit, then you don't deserve this job, because intersectional social justice bullshit will suck out and destroy the merit of anything it touches or anything that it's involved with.
Yeah, and the worst part is that the women who were protecting Trump weren't even in good shape.
Yeah. Like, please, by all means, put a woman on the Secret Service if you have, like, an Ellen Ripley or Ronda Rousey or, again, Karen Murphy type. But those are the only people that should be in the Secret Service. And that goes for men, too, by the way. You don't get Movie Bob to be a Secret Service agent. You don't get comic book guy from The Simpsons to be a Secret Service agent. You don't get the Nutty Professor to be a Secret Service agent. You get the kind of tough as nails, hoorah military guys who can kick ass and take names. And the same should be true for the female candidates for this job. If they're not like an Ellen Ripley, a Sarah Connor in D2, or a Karen Murphy, they probably don't belong in this job.
Honestly, I think at this point, Trump should hire private security to supplement the Secret Service protection, because it's blatantly obvious that the Secret Service isn't actually willing to allocate the necessary resources that it's going to take in order to keep him safe. So you should hire some people that could actually do that.
And Lord knows he has enough money and resources to. And honestly, there's plenty enough MAGA people in the military who would give their left nut to protect Trump. So the pool of reasonable candidates are probably not as small as you would think. Some people would probably do it pro bono just to say they did it.
Yeah. But anyway, we're going to wrap things up here. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys. We'll see you in the next one, I suppose.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody.